On Sunday night, 60 Minutes aired a lengthy interview with now Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, giving her the encore presentation to cap the week of the new House's impressive display of crazy. Nancy Pelosi took back the gavel after an 8-year hiatus from her speakership, and her party immediately got to work doing a victory dance all over the same Constitution that they just swore to support and defend. Immediate proposals for more gun control, a constitutional amendment to scrap the Electoral College, Maxine Waters is going to tell American business to fill diversity quotas to her satisfaction. And of course, on day one, articles of impeachment against a duly elected president were introduced and endorsed with exclamation.
We're going to go in there, we're going to impeach the motherfucker.
And still, despite the new House majority treating the Constitution like it's the last square of toilet paper at the X-Lax convention, the progressive poster girl delivered the most significant eyebrow raises of the week, at least in my judgment. Much of her interview with Anderson Cooper focused on Ocasio's plan for a so-called Green New Deal, a plan to transition the entire U.S. economy away from fossil fuels to 100% renewable energy sources immediately by the year 2030. So no more gasoline cars, they gotta be electric. And no fossil fuels to make that electricity either. Never mind, that's how we currently generate over 60% of it. We're gonna have to figure out another way. Even before questions of cost, there are questions of practicality. It's the same question I'd ask about transitioning to entirely unicorn transit or exclusively Bigfoot labor. How in the fuck? How are you going to completely rebuild the entire country's economic infrastructure in 12 years with technology that doesn't currently exist in the capacity we would need it to? That's a great first question to ask.
You're talking about zero carbon emissions, no use of fossil fuels within 12 years?
That is the goal. It's ambitious. And
how is that possible? You're talking about everybody having to drive an electric car?
It's going to require a lot of rapid change that we don't even conceive as possible right now. What is the problem with trying to push our technological capacities to the furthest extent possible?
The problem is rapid change is not inherently good, especially if you as the captain of this ship readily admit we're going full speed ahead in a direction nobody really fully understands or is even thought of as possible yet. Forgive me if I trust industry leaders and market innovation to push energy technology over you, a person with no relevant experience whatsoever. But let's say it is possible. Let's say Ocasio is the Sandra Bullock to our Bird Box boat, and she's going to guide us to the promised land without any sense of where we're actually going. The next natural question you'd think she'd have a better answer for by now is, how are we going to pay for this drastic immediate action? You're talking about rebuilding this country over again from scratch. Where is that kind of money coming from?
This would require the raising taxes.
There's an element where, people are going to have to start paying their fair share in taxes.
Do you have a specific on the tax rate?
You look at our tax rates back in the 60s. Once you get to like the tippy tops, on your $10 millionth dollar, sometimes you see tax rates as high as 60 or 70%. As you climb up this ladder, you should be contributing more.
Tax the millionaires every dollar they earn. Tax their mansions. Tax their yachts. Tax their arms. Tax their legs. Take their firstborn children. It still won't be enough money to completely replace this entire country's infrastructure in 10 years' time. It's this sort of grandiose claim about financing that often earns Ocasio scrutiny from fact checkers. And this is where the interview transitions from questions of practicality to questions of philosophy and morality. She says we shouldn't let a focus on factual accuracy obscure the pursuit of her morally righteous cause.
One of the criticisms of you is that your math is fuzzy. The Washington Post recently awarded you 4 Pinocchios.
Oh my goodness.
For misstating some statistics about Pentagon spending.
If people want to really blow up one figure here or one word there, I would argue that they're missing the forest for the trees. I think that there's a lot of people more concerned about being precisely, factually, and semantically correct than about being morally right.
A few points a lot of people have picked up on here. First, This is a laughable and weird prioritization of values. As Nuance Bro tweeted, it's a total reversal of Ben Shapiro's mantra. I guess Ocasio's feelings don't care about your facts. It's also an argument that's inherently subjective and universally applicable. You can use her reasoning to justify any lie you want. She says her lies are totally different than the president's lies.
It's not the same thing as the president lying about immigrants. It's not the same thing at all.
But why? Why can't I just flip her argument to say, who cares if the president's claims are factually correct or not? His effort to build the wall is morally right. So let's not miss the forest for the trees, right? But speaking of missing the forest for the trees, I don't want to do that. I actually will heed that portion of her advice. Because as much as we all love to dunk on Ocasio's misstatements and impossibly lofty ideas, it's crucial that we pay attention to the core of what she's saying here, that her ideas are fundamentally moral, and that by implication, anyone who opposes them is not. So let's think about what she's saying here for a moment. She is saying that above some arbitrary threshold, I, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, am entitled to 3 out of every $4 that you earn. I am entitled to 3 out of every 4 hours that you work. I am entitled to 3 out of every 4 fruits of your labor. And why? Because I know how to spend your money better than you do. This is a philosophy predicated on the idea that your labor and your property aren't actually yours, that they belong to some philosopher king who will put those things to better use than you will. It's a philosophy that says, I am taking your earnings at gunpoint if you refuse, because I need to invest that money in things you're too stupid to invest in yourself. And I guess maybe I missed it, but where is the morality in this sort of thinking? How is it moral to take someone's stuff and repurpose it without their consent? Oh, because my cause is righteous, or because I'm giving that stuff to the greater good or a more pressing need. Take whatever rationalization you want, but if that's the case, Alexandria, consider these hypotheticals. If I break into your DC apartment and give your fancy clothes to Goodwill, is that morally right, as you put it? If I steal the electric car you buy in preparation for your Green New Deal and donate it to Cars for Kids, is that morally right? If I had put my hands in your tip jar at your old bartending job and given the money to the bums outside, would that have been morally right? And if not, why not? After all, I'm just taking your luxury items and reallocating them to more pressing needs. This is fundamentally the moral case that you make. And if you're dissatisfied with this standard applied to yourself, Alexandria, maybe then you can see how the case that you're making is a fundamentally immoral one. Certainly not a case with which to lecture the rest of us who disagree with you, at least not on any moral terms. If you want morality, here are some basic tenets. Nobody owns your labor but you. Nobody owns your property but you. Nobody owns your association but you. And anybody trying to coerce you otherwise is committing a fundamentally immoral act because that person is trying to co-opt property and personal rights to which they have no claim. And this isn't just theoretical thinking about how people ought to treat each other in the ideal. The flaws in your thinking are paired with observable, practical, historically repeated negative outcomes that harm people, not help them. A philosophy of central planning and seizing property for the greater good always, without exception, only results in greater human suffering and no more property left to seize. And so it's nothing personal, Alexandria. It's not that I distrust you uniquely to reverse that trend. I don't trust anyone to do it because it has never produced positive results, and it necessarily requires violating people's rights. But hey, prove me wrong. Maybe you are the one who finally read the manifesto thoroughly enough to realize Marx's true vision, unlike all your failed revolutionary predecessors who weren't up to the task. Go for it. But I won't let you lecture me about how you're more moral than I am in the process. You're the one with your hands in other people's tip jars, not me. Thanks as always for listening and for supporting this channel always. Appreciate that thoughtful discussion down below and especially over on Twitter. That is at ML Christiansen. You're always welcome to coming out and chat in my live streams. Those are linked down in the description. Looking forward to it. Goodbye.